We are
We're
live.
live. Okay, good.
Welcome to another intro to the wonderful and crazy world of anime hangouts. We are
Number
on
14.
number 14, as John has told me. And we are doing today Fooli Cooli. We started doing it last week. That was the plan.
Mhm.
But
In honor of my birthday, which was last Wednesday. But on last Tuesday, there was a bit of a scheduling issue, and on Thursday, there was a massive technical hiccup of some sort that we have yet to figure out exactly.
yeah, we have no idea what happened there. Like, it just decided to, I don't
Mhm.
know, just not work for anybody,
Yeah.
essentially. Have you noticed, like, the screen is, like, switching back and forth? I don't know.
It's supposed to do that.
Oh, it's really cool. I never
It's supposed to
noticed
switch
that.
back. It's supposed to switch on to whoever's talking.
That's awesome. I never noticed that before. So, now that we are officially on a hangout, first
Hmm.
of all, happy birthday again.
Thank you.
I
And
know that
and
you
thank
are.
you for the shirt. If I can get back far enough to show this off.
Yay!
Adjust the monitor. There we
You
go.
got your awesome Fooli Cooli shirt.
It's a character named Conti from Fooli Cooli, my favorite character from the show, which you didn't know when you bought it from me.
No, I didn't. I didn't until I actually ended up like asking you. I was like, I wanted to get this for you, but I wanted to make sure first that you really like this character.
And I think my response was along the lines of, "Oh my God, that's awesome! Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you."
Awesome. And I wore like my happy birthday. Well,
Mm-hmm.
this is a really random shirt.
Mm.
I don't know if you can see it, but
I
it
see
says
Wacky Olympics, happy birthday, and kind of an Olympic head.
Happy birthday, Nicholas,
Ah.
1998. So really random, but I figured, since we finally got an official hangout
Yes.
going, because last week was just busted.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go ahead and start with episode 1
Well,
of Furi
just
Curi.
to start off, just a basic introduction. Fooli Cooli is kind of notoriously weird. Arcada from Glass Reflections has basically called it the epitome of WTF Japan. Um, uh,
Yeah.
Anime Zone, Gig UK, who does Anime Zone on YouTube, effectively called it ADHD the anime.
I
It,
would
it,
say ADHD is a very good way to call it, for sure.
it's kind of notoriously weird and surreal, and it's basically just a coming of age story filtered through the mind of a 12-year-old boy. So the older woman he develops his first crush on turns into an alien, and there's a horn that sprouts out of his head that obviously is a rather obvious analogy for something else.
Let's just say what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's his puberty coming out.
Yes. So on to episode 1, which is called Fooli Cooli. In this episode we meet Nauta, the protagonist, the 12-year-old boy, and Mamimi, who he has. Mamimi is his brother's ex-girlfriend. His brother moved to America to play baseball. His older brother. She's 17. He's 12.
Did you find that weird? I mean, come on.
They
I
they
get
have
it, but it's.
yeah. She
We'll go more into that later.
treats him as an emotional surrogate. Yeah, a lot
Mm-hmm.
of cuddling. She, as she puts it, leaves her mark on him. A fairly
He likes
inappropriate relationship, but
she pees on him essentially.
and it is inappropriate, and it really kind of starts what is really a dark story for Mamimi. Because most of the show is very comedic and wacky, but if you look at Mamimi, it's a very, very dark storyline.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad that you brought that up because I felt Mamimi, even though she was one of the secondary characters, like her emotional, like distraught really came through very clearly in the show. I mean, clearly, to me, she was hanging on to her ex-boyfriend's brother
Yeah.
as also a last-ditch effort, essentially, to
Mhm.
kind of, hold on to that
Yeah, yeah.
emotion that she had.
Well, she calls Nauta Takun, which is what she called Tasku, his brother, and
Yep.
also what she calls a stray cat she finds later in the series, and a little robot that she finds in the last episode. So
Yeah.
her Takuns are her emotional surrogates, and jumping slightly ahead, in the last episode, there's a great line that she has when she finds the little robot.
Which one?
In the last episode, when she finds the robot, um, I can't find the exact line, but she basically says, your name is Takun now. You're responsible. Or,
Yeah,
there it is. All right, you're responsible. Then from now on, your name is Takun. Basically, everything she names Takun is responsible for her emotional well-being.
yeah, for sure. I actually really, for me, like I could draw close to like Mimimi's character the most
Mm.
because growing up it was difficult for me. I was a weird kid. I mean, clearly I love anime and and I wrote dark poetry and I was one of those like brooding teenage kids
I didn't
that
get into the dark period till college.
yeah. I mean, I continued that all the way into college, and then
Mm.
at some point, like, it just, I started to be like, okay, well, this is, going to be part of me, and that's just going to be who I am. And
Mm.
also, Mimimi is an artistic soul. I mean, she's always looking at things in a way that is more not in your face, like in terms of the obvious. She's looking at different angles. She's looking at different shapes.
Mm.
She talks about the clouds. She talks
Well,
about
she
her
carries a camera with her all the time,
yeah,
constantly takes photos throughout the series.
and she's always taking photos of everything. So it's definitely to me like she's your typical 17-year-old girl who can't talk to her parents. Her
Mm-hmm.
parents don't really care. And it's sad though because you also get the feeling, and she brings this up in one part where her parents she talks about how she doesn't like plays, but
Mm-hmm.
she does because her parents actually went and watched her plays
Yeah.
when she was in school. So she has that dueling, personality where she doesn't like her parents, but
Mm-hmm.
she also likes her parents.
Mm-hmm.
Like everybody has at
Yeah,
that
yeah,
age.
of course.
And also I think her parents are divorced.
Well, I don't know about that. There's a lot of things that are suggested about Mimi
Right.
that aren't really made clear. The parents divorced. The fact that they came to her plays suggests that that's the only time they were together.
Yes.
I also kind of got the feeling that she might be homeless.
Huh.
She never goes to class. We never. That's the only reference to her parents. We
Huh.
never see her anywhere but hanging out by the river.
She's like a
Or
runaway.
yeah, or possibly a runaway, which makes sense with the ending. Anyway,
That
rolling it
would
back
make
to
sense.
episode.
Yeah. So
Rolling it back to episode
let's
one.
get back on track with episode one. In
We meet.
episode one. Mhm.
We start off. We meet Nauda and Mimimi, and they're hanging out back by the river, which is where they hang out most of the time. And Nauda has this great speech about how, and it's really his classic line from the series: "Nothing amazing happens here. Everything is ordinary."
Yeah. I had that too. Everything is ordinary. And it's funny because I think in that shot, like it's like the city shot of Mabase, and you see the iron, and I'm like, how can you call that ordinary? Like,
There's a building in the middle of the city for a company called Medical Mechanica that is shaped like an iron, and he says every day it billows out this white smoke.
and that's ordinary, like
Well,
totally.
I
Yeah,
think it just kind of encapsulates that adolescent mindset of there's
nothing
nothing
you
around
have.
here that I'm interested in. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
nothing
that
you
age
have
when
to
you
do.
start thinking
Everything's
about,
the same. Mhm.
needing to get out of town, get away from, what you know.
Exactly. Um, I I love the part where we meet Haruhara
Hmm.
and Haruko, and the scene that is introduced to
Hmm.
us is fantastic.
We
She's
actually see her a second before then.
where?
When just before Mamimi and Nada are walking across the bridge and they start talking about her, Nada's brother, you see a shot of Haruko taking a drink you just kind of parked with her bike taking a drink,
Oh,
and you don't catch it because you don't know who she is at that point. If
right.
you've never seen it before, it's just this random shot of this pink-haired girl sitting there taking a drink,
Huh.
and then like 2 scenes later, she's very abruptly introduced.
Yeah, yeah. I love how she's introduced though.
She's riding this yellow Vespa. She pulls out this blue well, to be specific, since I'm a bass player, I have your Blue Rickenbacker 4001 bass. It's my dream bass. I've wanted one, even not just because of Fooli Cooli. Like two of my biggest influences play Rickenbackers. It's my favorite bass. So she pulls out this Blue Rickenbacker and yells "lunchtime," holding it over her head on this Vespa.
So she says lunchtime or launch time?
I always heard it as lunch. Launch makes a bit more sense.
Because when well, skipping on further into the show, she has him shoot or go at bat and swing the bat.
Yeah.
She says, I thought she said launch time, but
It could be lunch.
Lunch.
Could be either one. Lunch makes a bit more sense. Maybe I may be wrong about that. But the bike skids on this soda can that Nauta had thrown away.
Yeah.
And she runs straight into Nauta, knocks him about 10 feet in front of Mamimi, and then for the first time it very briefly goes manga, which I love.
I love it.
It's that thing in the series when they go manga.
That's my favorite part. One thing that I really love about the show in general is that they play a lot with the styles of art.
Yes.
You get manga art. You get like some even moe bits too, like the big eyes and the swirly bits in the eyes and everything.
And some of it's very detailed. Some of it's very basic.
Yeah.
From what I've read, it was created so that Gainax, the company that made it, could test out some new animation gear. So I think they were just throwing every style of animation they could at it just to test the new gear.
Yeah, I think they like you were telling me that they were on a break from I read actually that they were on a break from Evangelion.
Oh, okay, makes sense.
They were making a break. They were on a break from Evangelion, which was very, very serious, and very time-consuming and very daunting of a task. They decided to go with something way more fun and unique, if you will. And I will tell you, I've never seen an anime like this. The only thing I could think that's kind of close is maybe Dead Leaves.
Dead Leaves?
Dead Leaves. It's an anime film.
I've seen it. And we reviewed it on my podcast a couple years ago.
Really, really bizarre. You have no idea what's going on. There's a robot for. Actually, when we first meet Conti, I thought of the
TV
robot.
The guy with the TV on his head. Yeah.
Yes.
But the director of Fooli Cooli, I'm gonna butcher this name, I think probably Kazuya Tsurumaki, has said that he tried to break the rules of anime when making it. For example, hiring a contemporary Japanese band and patterning after the style of Japanese commercial videos, creating a work that is short but dense packed. And that is Fooli Cooli in a nutshell.
That's definitely a good way to put it.
Yeah, it's 6 episodes, but a lot happens in those episodes.
Yeah. So one of my favorite things that when we meet Haruko, she's saying he's dead, I killed him. And she's rolling around, and she's just rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling. And
sitting on her feet, basically, but staying in that basic position, but moving constantly, rolling on her back at one point.
It's awesome. It's one of my favorite scenes of the show, actually.
And as many times as I've seen it, I've seen Fooli Cooli probably 20 times. I saw it between November 2013 and the last July 11 times, because I was doing the monthly thing for a while.
Yeah.
And just this last time, I caught a line. Actually, I caught a few things that I hadn't before, even after all those times. When Haruko first hits Nauta, and he goes flying in front of Mamimi, Mamimi says, "Already?" And I had to think about the line, because, she's saying already like she was waiting for this to happen when, he just got hit by a bike. And that represents Nauta hitting puberty.
Uh-huh.
And he's 12, and so she's thinking, already? At that age?
Yeah. I also love that when when Haruko gives Naoto CPR and Mamimi's face is just classic, manga crazy face. And then, of course, so going forward, Haruka gives CPR to Naoto, who she hit with her Vespa. And
while Mamimi is screaming.
While Mamimi's going, whoa!
In this great Matrix style, pan around shot.
Yes, Like her face and her eyes are like giant saucers, like.
And I love the moment right after that scene because
um,
in the middle of the scream while she's giving her Noda CPR, they cut to the two of them, Haruko and Mamimi, sitting in their trailer,
yes, yes. Oh my God, I love that. And they're saying like,
and
"Oh, you should
Mamimi says, "The slow motion scenes are hard
have
to." She says
that."
the slow motion scenes are hard to do. You have to hold your face like that for a long time. And Haruko says, you can get cramps doing that."
Yeah,
In walks Noda. You actually did that? I thought
yeah,
it was a special effect.
yes. I love that. Like they have these little split-second moments.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's great.
And they have a lot of great breaking the fourth wall moments. Like in the end
Yes,
when they finally talk about, yeah, we didn't want to do more manga, but the audience really loved it, and we were accused of being
yeah,
lazy,
yeah,
so we
yeah.
did it
I
again.
love that. I love that they play around so much
Mhm.
with the fourth wall. It's fantastic.
And actually, I realized that also that we find out that Haruko is an alien, or she admits it way earlier than we think I ever realized she does. She admits it in this episode.
Yeah, she does. She
She
says
first
it
she
right
tells
away.
Haruko she tells Naruto that she's an alien, but
Yeah.
also when she hits him and Mamimi rushes in to make sure he's okay, she says native girl must stop.
Oh, I didn't catch
Which
that.
I've never connected, but that's a reference to Haruko being an alien and
Right,
Mamimi
right, right.
being
And
human.
Mamimi's being the native. Huh. Interesting. Um, I actually so Naota gets a weird bump.
Mm-hmm.
How to go
Big
hitting.
horn on his forehead.
Yeah, right in the forehead.
Mhm.
So, then he gets his bump, and then he goes home, and he finds out Haruka is the
Mhm.
housekeeper for his father's bakery. And we find out later on his father actually ran a newspaper, I think it was,
Well, kind of
a magazine type thing.
local, like self-produced
Like a
political
Zine,
magazine.
right? Like a Zine, I would
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
Yeah. So, and now he's,
Wake Up Mabase was the name of it.
what was it?
Wake Up Mabase, which is the name of the town.
hmm So, um, so then Naruto has his bump, and Haruka's the housekeeper, and then I can't read my notes.
Well, the next day he goes to the hospital before he finds
Yeah.
out about Haruko being the housekeeper. He goes to the hospital to have the bump checked out,
hmm
and Haruko ends up being the nurse. And there's this great moment where she's impersonating the nurse at first and doing this kind of high pitched voice, and
Yeah,
then as the voice shifts, you hear both at the same time, and then it becomes Haruko's voice.
yeah, that was awesome. I like that.
And then he's running away from her, and you see the hospital jumping up and down in the background as she's chasing after him with the bass. But yeah, I think we jumped over that. She gives him CPR,
Uh-huh.
revives him after she hits him with the bike, and then yeah, we skipped it. She hits him in the head with her bass, which
hmm
has this like pull start motor on the back, which is what causes the horn.
Exactly. So then,
He
Naoto
goes
goes home.
home and sees that but
Haruka is there.
Haruko is the new housekeeper, and then they go manga for real the first time.
Right. That whole bit was fantastic when they
Mhm.
went manga, and you're sitting there, and I had a hard time really understanding what the hell was going on during that manga series. I was like, what is that? Like
The dialogue isn't supposed to make sense.
the grandpa's there, the dad is there, like
Mhm.
they're like all running around, and then there's all this
Mhm.
like circles, and I don't even know. I was sitting there going like, what happened here? I don't even understand. So when they get out of the manga part, I'm like, oh, okay, we're back to the
Mhm.
show.
Also, one of my favorite characters is introduced just before then, in addition to Kanti, of course.
Mhm.
Gaku Manabe, one of Naoto's classmates, the one with the glasses, who
Yes,
says everything twice.
yes.
And
Um,
I just found out that's his name, I just found out what his name is, Gaku Manabe. He has the same last name, or I should say family name, because it's first over in Japan,
mhm.
as the lead guitarist from The Pillows, who did the music for the show.
Huh. So
Yoshiaki Manabe.
essentially,
So
they wrote a family member in.
yeah, they named him after Yoshiaki Manabe, and just while we're on the subject, the music in this series is one of the most defining factors. Aside from a classical piece in episode 3, it's all done by this Japanese alt rock band called the Pillows, and it almost turns the series into one big AMV.
Yeah, I could see that. It really is like a continuous story. Like if you
Mhm.
watched it, it would be like a full length film, you know?
Actually, this weekend, I think it was Sunday night, I've been wanting to do this for a couple of years. I finally got around to doing it. I have all 6 episodes in video files that I, shall we say, acquired a couple of years ago. It was the first copy that I had.
Uh-huh.
And I've been wanting to edit them together into a movie for a couple of years now. I finally did it. It works beautifully. I just cut off, in episodes 1 through 5, cut out the closing credits and the preview. And
Mhm.
when I could, I cut out the splash screen saying FLCL. Couldn't do that in a few episodes, but aside from that, it flows perfectly as a film.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Yeah, because I was sitting there thinking the way that I mean, I watched it back to back to back, and like I think that's the best way because otherwise you're completely lost, and it's really not until episode 3 or 4 even that it kind of starts to come together more
The
so.
end of 4 is where I figured it out, when he swung the bat. That's where
Right.
it became obvious for me. But that entire episode, and we're jumping ahead, that whole episode is really just the baseball analogy writ large.
Yeah.
First base, second base, etc.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
But getting back to episode 1, so Haruko's now the housekeeper. Naoto's got this big horn on his head. That is, an obvious, some obvious subtext. And then something happens. Well, when he's talking to Mamimi on the bridge, that because she had taken some photos of the accident with the bike. She says, if I don't do it, I'll overflow, and I don't ever quite understood what that was in reference
Yeah.
to. If she
I
doesn't
don't know
kind
what
of
she's talking about there.
molest, if she doesn't effectively molest Nauta, she'll overflow. She said that earlier, and then while they're
She's
talking,
a little strange. Like
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I didn't I don't know. At that age, I never really crushed on a 12-year-old kid.
yeah, yeah. Well, as
7,
we've established,
12.
Mamimi has some serious emotional issues, as we've
Yeah.
established.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So it's
But
clear that she's just holding on to whatever she can.
and so they're talking on the bridge, and she suddenly grabs her head and he says, "What's wrong?" She says, I'm going to overflow." And then all of a sudden,
His
probably the
mind
most
goes.
pivotal moment in the first episode, aside from the accident,
His horn.
2 giant robots emerge from the horn. One of them being the one on my shirt, the other one being a giant hand.
Yes.
And I've always wondered if that was subtext. I can't really make a case.
I didn't catch that until now.
I mean, the horn is obvious subtext, but I never really was sure about the hand.
Well, you know what? If that was what they were going for, you caught it. I mean, because I was just sitting there like, oh, that's an awesome robot fight. Like the hands and the TV head robot, but I wasn't really thinking, you know.
I didn't catch that the first time. It was, I was much like you, just kind of confused and amazed by the whole thing at first. It was later on down the road when I figured out what the series was about and started looking for all of the subtext that I thought, wait, giant hands, does that mean anything? Because Conti kind of has, I posted something in the community of, it was a analysis of all symbolism in the series.
Right.
And in that it suggested that Conti represents Naota's brother, or at least the ideal of Naota's brother.
Ah, that would make sense. Uh-huh.
But he also is kind of, and then I'm saying he for Conti, when Conti doesn't really have a gender, he's a robot.
I don't know. I actually thought Conti represented his manhood.
That's interesting, because he's also kind of a maternal figure, Conti. You see him cooking at
Well,
times, and he's kind of protective,
that's true.
and
I mean, I don't know. I guess like when he's fighting, at least that
mhm,
really
yes,
represented his
and
manhood.
he's kind of protective, and I guess maybe it does represent what Casco represents to Nada,
Mm-hmm.
which I guess means that there isn't really any subtext within fighting the giant hand. But so Nada gets hooked onto Conti during the fight and ends up going along for the ride. In comes Haruko, whose bracelet, she has this manacle bracelet with a bit of chain link on it that started vibrating the minute the robots emerged. She comes, racing toward them on the Vespa, jumps in the air, and smacks Conti in the head again with her base, ending the fight.
I don't even know how to respond to that. Like she just comes and she's like, "Wah!" And she smacks him in the head, and it's like, how are you supposed to like what? I don't even know.
And Noda says, in that moment, she reminded me of my brother.
Really?
That's like the last line. That and then Attico kind of looking around for something, because you don't know what she's looking for yet. You don't know what she's there for yet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But and I just have to say the ED, the ending sequence, the ending theme, absolutely iconic for this show. Ride on Shooting Star by the Pillows. It's really the first Pillows song that everybody becomes familiar with because it's their most
Yeah.
iconic.
Mhm.
So on to episode two, unless we want to try to analyze one a little more.
No, 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 no. I'm
Okay.
good. We can go on to episode 2. I don't really have anything else to add.
This
Um,
this one is really the proper introduction of Mamimi.
I love this episode. This episode for me was one of my favorite
Hmm.
because Mamimi is playing this game and she's playing God essentially. She's
Yeah, yes.
starting these fires, and she is, further like talking about how we're saying how she's like got this emotional distress
Hmm.
or some sort of like problem with.
The god in the video game is a god of destruction who burns everything.
Yes. So she kind of reminds me of like 90s girl grunge, like
Yeah,
that's
well,
exactly what I totally got from.
it was the series was put out in 2000, so
Well,
that
there
was
you go.
probably
Yeah,
an
yeah, yeah, that
influence.
makes sense. I didn't even think about when the series was put out, but yeah, that would make a lot of sense. So we start off. Mimimi is playing this game,
Mhm.
and she says, "I saw God the other day, a blackened angel." Like
And this is while
that.
she's watching Conti. She discovers Conti at this point because he's
Right.
out flying around these, kind of burned down buildings, and she
Yeah.
sees him with these halo and these wings on that apparently that somebody put on him, probably Haruka.
Mhm.
And she says, "I saw God," and she starts from that moment thinking that Conti, the robot that just came out of Nada's head, is a god.
Yes. Yes. And we see her playing this game, and she's just starting fires like all
Mhm.
over the place. There's just fires, and we've also find out that Naota has two horns now. He
Mhm.
went to he's at the hospital again, and Haruko is his
Well, actually,
nurse.
that wasn't the hospital. That was his room.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right. Sorry, it
Yeah,
wasn't
she
the hospital.
stole the gear, the extra gear.
Yeah, she's just and she's sitting there, and he goes, "Oh, I have two horns now. There's now a horn in the back of his head."
Mhm.
And I love what he says, a true story that sounds like a lie.
Yeah.
And it's like one of those you won't believe what happened to me type of
And it's
Bigfoot story.
and it's right after Hadako just admits to him that she's an alien.
Yeah.
And I love that bit because as she's introducing herself, Hadako, first class officer of the Space Patrol or whatever it is, and you've got
Mhm.
this drum roll, and this is the first time I've ever caught Conti on one knee next to her doing jazz hands as she's doing this introduction with this drum roll.
Really? I have to look for that. That's hilarious. I didn't see
Mm-hmm.
that. I've got to go back and look at that. Um, and I love that she says we're not going on Star Search.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't write the context
Late
of,
90s.
huh?
Late 90s.
Yeah. And Oh, and so we see Nauta, and he's talking to his dad. I remember he was talking to his dad, and Conti's there, and he's doing all this work, and he's cleaning the house and all this stuff. And he's like, you know what, Dad? Like, Conti shouldn't be out in public like this. People are going to start looking at us and thinking we're crazy.
Mm.
And then he said the robot's not yours to use. And then his dad says, is your name written on him?
Mhm.
And he says it's weird having a robot in the house. For
And I love
me,
it.
go ahead.
Yeah, I love that Kamon just accepts the father just accepts that this robot has come out and is shown. I don't think he knows that he came out of his head, but he just accepts that this robot has shown up and is living with them.
He's just like, yeah, totally.
Mhm.
You know what? It's kind of like if you had a Roomba, you know, the Roomba, and
Mhm.
like it had arms and legs, and it just like was able to like do a bunch of stuff. Like
Mhm. Yeah.
that's what I thought of with Conti, and I said actually, I wrote to myself like, I really want a robot like that. That would be
Mhm.
awesome. Like he
Oh,
can
yeah.
do all the cooking and cleaning, and like just give him stuff to do, and be like, okay, here, Conti, go take care of this.
Mhm.
You know.
At one point, Nauta says that Kamon wrote a book on the deep mysteries of Eva. Was that a reference to Evangelion?
Huh. Now to said that,
Yeah, because if they were on break from
that would
Evangelion, if
make
they
total sense. Yeah.
the deep mysteries of Eva, particularly given the ending of Evangelion, which we won't get into here, but it's very weird.
It anyway. Yeah, we're not
And
gonna.
and I think the deep mysteries of Eva was kind of a nod to we're gonna do something weird at the end of Evangelion.
Yeah, I think maybe that might have been that. I didn't
Mhm.
even catch that, so that's interesting.
And
Um,
one thing I always liked throughout the series is that Gaku, Masashi, his other friend, and
mhm.
Ninamori, the girl, the girl in what I kind of referred to as the love square. Um, they refer to Mamimi as Naoto's wife, which I thought was kind of cute because it
Yeah.
was just so typical of that age.
Did it was I thought it was it Mimimi, or I thought they were talking about Haruko.
No, it was always Mamimi. Because she's always hanging around with
Oh,
Naoto.
okay. All right. That makes sense.
Hmm.
Um, I love what the dad says. He says it's symbolic to have a humanoid robot in the house while the pursuit of unconventional science still exists.
Hmm.
That was awesome.
And
And
in the scene where they're sitting around on the porch, basically at Naota's house, you've got Haruko, Mamimi, and Naota, while Kanti is off. He'd been sent to the store to pick up a magazine for the grandfather, whose name I can never remember for some reason.
yeah, Conti picked up Hustler.
Yeah.
I was like,
And when they're showing the three of them, they show the name and their age, and they even do it with the two cats, with Mamimi's with Takun the second and Mew Mew, Naota's cat. Except Mamimi's name is backwards.
really?
They show every name Western style, individual name and then family name,
Uh-huh.
except for Mamimi. It's Samajima Mamimi, which is the
Backwards.
Japanese style. It's the
Yeah.
family name first.
Hmm.
I just thought it was odd that and I've checked like multiple sources to make sure Mamimi is, her given name, and it's Samajima is her family name, and hers is the only one that was backwards, which I always thought was odd. And it's even in the subs version.
Huh. I didn't even catch that.
Hmm.
Um, now where are we? Episode 2,
Hmm.
and where are we now? Sorry, my
Yeah.
I'm looking through
Well,
my
we're
notes.
kind of jumping around.
Yeah,
I
let's
had
go back to episode 2.
yeah.
So, go ahead.
I forget exactly the setup, but Nauta is walking with Mamimi, from the river, and he sees this fire,
Yeah.
and he turns, and Mamimi was gone.
Mhm.
He goes to look for her and finds her surrounded by these what is effectively a candle circle, but out of cigarettes, with
I
this
felt it was
boombox in the middle.
like a Wiccan type of
Mm,
ritualistic
yeah,
thing, where
there's
she's got all
definitely
these
yeah.
cigarettes around her, like it's like candles
Hmm.
essentially or something, and so she was going to have some sort of uh ritual or something, in that moment. Like it was a really interesting
Hmm.
way to discuss how that was where like she was with Naota's brother, and that's where he saved her
Yeah, yeah.
from the
There was
fire.
a fire at the primary school that they went to, and Tasku was is a year older than Momimi, and he saved her from the fire, and ever since then she kind of fixated on him.
Yeah. So was she really his wife? I mean, girlfriend?
I
Or
think they were a couple
was?
because it's established that the grandfather hated her and
Oh,
wouldn't let her
okay.
in the house.
Yeah, because I was thinking like maybe she was just a friend and like she just decided that she was going to be the girlfriend, but she's not really the girlfriend. That's
A
kind of.
few times by Nauda and his father, she's referred to as Tasku's ex-girlfriend.
Oh, okay. So there we go.
Yeah.
Now, where are we? So then Mamimi is with Naota. They're in the fire, and
And previously there'd been some suggestion that the fire was arson,
yes, yeah, and then
which kind of made me wonder if Mamimi was the one who said it.
yeah, actually, I wrote Firestarter like because
Mm-hmm.
that's the name of the
That's
game,
the new episode, yeah. So
but
that's an episode.
and and that's the name of the game
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
So I was thinking that she might have started the fire. She's the one who's doing all these other fires, and
And about this point, there's this great moment where they show the game because she dropped it and Nada handed it back to her, and she said, "Yeah, I don't need it." And they showed the screen of the game with this voiceover of Nada explaining what the game is about with this really odd music. It's the Pillows again, but it's a remix of one of their songs, so it kind of sounds very electronic.
hmm
And it took me probably 3 times to catch it, but underneath Nada's voiceover explaining the game, there are all these clips from the series, from episodes one, you mostly, that weren't in the episode that give much more explanation. Like
oh,
you hear Mew Mew, the cat, talking in English about to Hadako about the alien plan because she uses the cat to talk to her superiors. So you hear the cat talking back to her. When you hear certain other dialogue that was sort of obviously wasn't cut out of episode one, but it fills in a lot more of the story up to that point. But you have to watch it like 3 times to listen for that.
I didn't catch that at all.
Yeah.
Um,
But it was
I
just this
like
nice subtle backstory.
oh, by the way, I forgot to mention this. I really love when she's sees Conti flying through the air and she says
Mm-hmm.
that it's a god.
Yeah.
So it's going, back to her whole
Mm-hmm.
thing with thinking that Conti is a god, that
Yeah.
there's a robot that just came out of his head, and clearly God was created from, Naota's head. And I also wrote here that you cannot burn everything. I don't remember who said that now, but I just wrote it down. I think it
don't
was
remember
Naruto.
that one.
Huh?
I don't remember that one actually.
I think it was Naruto that says you
Okay.
cannot burn everything. I think so
Uh-huh.
because I just wrote it down. And then I love when Naruto got eaten and
Mm-hmm.
transformed into the robot.
Yeah. Another robot comes out of Nauda's head. This one again starts a fight with Conti, who shows up, and then Conti picks up Nauda and eats him, and uses him as ammunition against this robot that was up until that point kicking both Conti and Haruko's asses.
Yeah. And after the fight, um, Conti shits out Naruto.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she said. Mamimi says, "You're all sticky and something smells."
And that was pretty much episode.
Oh, and also I noticed that whenever someone mentions Tasku, it triggers Conti turning red,
Ah,
which is a thing later. We find out what it means when Conti turns red, because normally he's kind of greenish.
right. I didn't
But
know.
I just noticed it this time, so it's
Huh.
one of those. This show is very much the gift that keeps on giving because there's so much there that you need to see it 20 or more times to really pick out some finer detail. But since this is the episode that really covers Mamimi, Mamimi is easily my biggest anime crush. Not necessarily because of her look, she's cute, but largely because she is the perfect storm of all of these personality traits that I find utterly irresistible, but need to avoid like the damn plague.
Well, she's also crazy. I mean,
Exactly.
she's insane.
Mhm.
She's following around a 12-year-old boy. You know, she is potentially an arsonist.
Yeah.
She also like decided to skip school, and like she's very artistic. She
Mhm.
takes photos of everything. She sees things in different ways. So, I mean, that was something to me that I thought was really, really interesting. I love Mamimi's character.
In the first episode, you see that she has "Never Knows Best" written on her cigarettes, and that's going to be my next tattoo for a few reasons. Partially
Really?
because I'm obsessed with Fooli Cooli for one thing. Also
Uh-huh.
because I quit smoking about a year and a half ago, so it's relevant to that. But also because a reminder of that I need to avoid this. I need to avoid this type.
You
I
need to avoid that type of girl?
I have a theory about Fooli Cooli. I think there are three kinds of relationships that are shown in the love square as Arcada called it. You
Uh,
have Haruko, who is kind of that massive life changing crush that you never really get over. You just kind of move on from.
it's like the ideal. I feel
Yeah,
like Haruko is like your ideal, unattainable,
exactly.
you're never
Yeah.
gonna get over
hmm
crush.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I I was a little older than Naoto when I found mine. It was in college, but it was still 20 years ago, and she's a good friend. But I'm still, I have no intention of pursuing it. We'd kill each other if we were anything more than friends. But I'm still not really over it. I'm always going to have, a little something there.
Well, you always like the love that you
hmm
had, your first real
Yeah.
love,
Well,
always
we were
for you.
never together. She wasn't interested. A mutual friend intervened on my behalf without my knowledge, and she said she sees me like a brother. It was one of those deals.
Ah,
It was 20 something years ago. I'm over. We're close friends, but I'm always gonna have a little crush on her.
right.
Never gonna pursue it. We'd kill each other if we were more than friends, and she's been in our current relationship for like 5 or 6 years. So nothing's gonna happen. But I'm always gonna have that. Yeah, have a little something there.
Mhm.
And then you have Mamimi, who is the convenient, hard to resist, but completely toxic relationship that I have had way too many of. For
Oh gosh. And what's the third? John?
there you go. You froze for a minute.
Huh? I
You
froze.
froze for a minute.
So who's the third?
Then you have and then you have Ninamori, who is that healthy relationship that you tend to stay with.
You
Tends to
should
actually
stay
work
with.
out.
You should
Yeah,
stay with.
yeah. I think I met Ninamori. I kind of screwed it up. Hopefully, I found another. Speaking of which, on to episode 3.
On to yeah. So now we actually.
I just wanted to get into that because that's a lot of why I love this show is because it resonates for me on that level of those different kinds of relationships. This
Well, it
is
also shows how like you would deal with those relationships essentially.
yeah.
Your ideal you bend over backwards for.
hmm
You would do anything for.
Yeah.
Your mamimi would be more of somebody that you rely on and you know is always there,
Uh-huh.
but probably isn't the most healthiest person for you
Right.
to be
Uh-huh.
around. Like I had a best friend back in college, and she I love her. I always will, but she probably we were toxic for each other
Yeah.
for a good period of time,
Uh-huh.
and it's just one of those people that you're around and it's just gonna bring you down,
Mhm. Yeah.
like mentally, emotionally. It's just not really a healthy feeling.
Right.
But Minamori is the go-getter, has
Yeah.
the ambition, has
Mhm.
like all the things you want. She also has the sarcasm and the
Mhm.
critical eye, which I
Yeah.
thought was great.
hmm
Um, and
It's
she's ahead of the class essentially. So
Conveniently on to episode 3, which is really Nina Mori's introduction.
yes.
And we start with her getting picked up by her father's secretary from school. Or going to school, I'm not sure. I think, yeah, she's going to school.
Mhm.
And she knows exactly who this Nina Mori knows exactly the relationship between her father and her secretary. She's completely aware of that. And she says, "You're a smart secretary because you brought a change of clothes."
Right, right. And
So
the
she's extremely
secretary said
worldly.
that you're mature for your age.
Yeah.
So then we find out that this is where we find out that Naota's dad was an
Hmm.
investigative journalist,
Yes.
and he was creating like a newsletter um, to kind of expose. It's
He
kind of
saw
like
various
gossipy,
kind of
but
yeah, various conspiracies through in the town. And
yes,
that scene has one of the reasons that I always recommend people watch the English language version, because in the subversion there's a reference to a soda. In the subversion, it's Cheerio, which is this Japanese soda that didn't work too well, didn't sell very well. Some pop singer did an ad for. In the English version, it's Crystal Pepsi,
Crystal
and
Pepsi.
there's a reference to the Van Halen ads. And
Yeah, that
it
was
probably
awesome.
it probably doesn't play if you're under 30, but if you actually remember Crystal Pepsi,
I do
it's
remember Crystal Pepsi.
a store that still sells Crystal Pepsi is it's just never gonna get. It just gets funnier time goes on, because it seems that much more absurd.
Right, like there was that wasn't that the time when Pepsi was doing like five different types of Pepsis
I
too,
think
like
so, yeah.
Crystal Pepsi, there was like some other I don't remember, ice something or I don't know. There was a
Hmm.
bunch of different ones.
Yeah.
Like all the
Also
soda
around the
was
time of
doing like
New
all this
Coke.
crazy. Huh?
Also around the time of New Coke, if I recall correctly.
Which one?
New Coke, where they changed the formula of
Yeah,
Coke.
yeah. That
Hmm.
I don't even get it.
Tried
So,
something to try to sell more.
huh?
They just tried something to try to sell more.
Yeah, of course.
Hmm.
That's the whole point. They always want to try to sell something.
And
Um,
Nina Mori
so
has a line in this episode that is almost her version of "Nothing Amazing Happens Here," when she says, "I don't think it's any big deal," and
yes,
she
yes,
says that about
love
everything.
says that multiple times.
Hmm.
She reminds me of a girl from Boogie Pop, and I was trying to remember which character, but there's a girl in Boogie Pop Phantom, and she totally reminds me of her. Her art style, the way they drew her, and like her character itself, she's just like whatever about everything. She really reminds me of her, and I can't remember now, but I'll tell you when I remember it.
It's a,
But
and it's
I wrote it down.
and there's a lot of parallels between her and Mamimi. You know,
Yes.
the only real difference is money. There's a suggestion, and I think very credible one, that Mamimi's family is very poor,
Yeah.
whereas Nina Mori, her father is the mayor, and they've got a lot of money.
Yeah.
But her parents are splitting up, and she's been through a lot. But Nina Mori takes a much more um, aggressive, hands-on approach to it. Later on, she actively tries to reconcile her parents, and she
Yeah.
just has a very different attitude towards it. Whereas Mamimi is just a
She's the
victim.
destructive.
Yeah.
She's instead of being the constructive, which is what you have with Minamori,
Hmm.
she is more of the destructive. Mamimi is the one who is depressed
Yeah.
and loves. She really likes school plays, but she's
Hmm.
depressed. And she says that she liked school plays because her parents went to them. This is where we find out that she's like, I think she said when my parents were living together or something like that,
Yeah.
that makes me think that her parents are divorced.
Hmm.
And I actually was like, so where are her parents? We've never seen them the whole
Hmm.
time in the show. Um, I love that. Who is it that says that the nouveau riche princess hiding in the streets?
That's uh,
Was it Mimimi
I think
that
it
said
was no, it was either Nina Mori or Nauta, because Nauta's skipping not skipping school, but he skipped out early to avoid this play rehearsal, and he
that? Right.
happens upon Nina Mori, who's also kind of hiding out from the play rehearsal, and
Oh,
just basically
she says it of
people in general.
herself.
Yeah, she
Mm-hmm.
says, "I'm a nouveau riche princess," because that's what the secretary had told her early, and she's just earlier in the episode, and she's just
Yeah.
parroting it. 'Cause
Yeah.
I get the impression she doesn't really know what it means.
No, I think she's just regurgitating it because she
Yeah.
heard it. It sounds
Okay.
interesting, you know.
And then
And
Nauta gets hit by the Vespa again.
and then we
He goes flying and towards Minamori, and there's this great moment where their faces are lined up, and there's this harp music, and you think they're gonna kiss. They just their heads smack into each other. And did you catch what happens when they crashed? When they collided?
no,
Both of their heads turned red.
huh?
It's
I
a
didn't.
very quick thing, but yeah, the tops of both of their heads turned red, which explains what happened later.
Yeah, huh? I didn't catch that at all.
But then Ninamori goes home with Nauta and Hadako to their house for some reason. I guess because they're concerned that she's injured and is going to sue, and they want to treat her to
Yeah.
dinner or something.
And
Which
he's Conti eating dinner.
mhm. Why is the TV eating dinner? What is it? It's a Walkman.
He's
Sony
That's her
brand?
television.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Why is your television walking around?
exactly.
Oh,
It's
oh, it's
a
a
Walkman.
Walkman.
Sony brand? Ninamori says that. And that scene has one of the most disturbing things I've seen in the entire series. A lot of people talk about, the weird things in the series. This is the weirdest to me. The suggestion of chocolate ice cream, or not chocolate ice cream, chocolate icing on curry.
Yeah, that was really strange. I don't know about that. Like,
Because now, basically, now is complaining about the curry being too hot, even though it's,
yeah,
mild for kids. And Hanako suggests that he should have chocolate icing on it, I guess to make it more appropriate for a kid.
I don't know. I think it just plays to the like whole childishness of
Mhm.
her because we see it later on that she still sees Naota as a child.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
she even actually goes out and says it. But yeah, that was one of the things that I thought was really really she's always kind of pushing how he's a child, but
Yeah.
she still flirts with him like pushing the envelope type
Well,
of thing.
because she wants something from him, which we find out later.
Yes. So Minamori is hanging out with Naota, and
Mhm.
she says, "I don't think it's any big deal. We can hang out tonight." Like she's talking to Naota and is like, "Hey, you know what? I'm here at your house. Like we
She
can hang
starts
out."
aggressively flirting with him.
Yeah. and, and I kind of was like, okay, this show is quickly turning into like a harem. You've got
A little
everybody
bit. Yeah.
after Naota. Like Minamori is after Naota. Haruko is after Naota, but we find out later on
For different
why.
reasons, yeah.
Right. But she flirts with him hardcore, like throughout
Hmm.
the show.
Yeah.
Then we've also got, of course, Mamimi, who is just all by her lonesome, and Naota is like her savior, essentially. So
But
this, like,
it's not exactly a harem because of for the motivations.
right.
Minamori is really the only one who's legitimately interested in him in the
Yeah.
right way.
Yeah. That's why I think it's more like pseudo harem.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way to describe it. So, um, and we find out that Minamori had cheated to get the lead role in the
Uh-huh.
play.
And then adjusted it so that the play is Puss in Boots, and she adjusts it so Nauta is the cat, so she gets to spend the entire play with Nauta,
Yes. And
who
then
by the and we forgot to mention because of the current robot or the robot that's about to come out of Nauta's head supposedly. He now has cat ears. He doesn't have a horn or two horns. Now it's cat ears.
I really was like, oh, I want to get those cat ears. Those are so cute. I want to wear them. But then, like,
You can
maybe
buy
that
them
would
easily.
be weird. Huh?
You can get those. You can get like hairbands with cat ears on them, I think.
I know, but like those particular ones, because they're
Um,
really cute. They're like floppy. So I was like, I really want to get cat ears like those. Those would be really cute. Just like floppy ears.
just to roll it back, I love the scene where Nina Mori sees the cat ears.
Yes. And
'Cause,
she's like pulling on his ears, like,
Hadako hits him with the bike. He falls over, and the hat that he had on to cover them falls off. She
yeah.
sees them, and she says, "What are these?" And,
Yeah.
Hadako at the top of the stairs with the loudspeaker from the bike. Don't touch it.
Yeah.
Like, you shouldn't touch it with your bare hands.
Yes, yes, you shouldn't touch it with your bare hands. That was
She
awesome.
touches the that's what it was. She touches the ears, she gets sick, then she goes home with
That's what
Nana
it
and
was.
Hanukkah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. So, Naota gets kissed.
Mhm. Well, that's the next day in school. They're at rehearsal, and Atiko is dropping off curry for Nana, and she kisses him just to screw with him, just in front of his classmates. And Gaku, of course, says, "Did she put her tongue in?"
And then,
And they're at rehearsal. Well, they're at rehearsal for the play, and I really gotta wonder why Ninamori is wearing gym shorts in that scene.
just for the factor that she's this image, that they're gonna be lusting
Yeah.
over essentially.
Mhm.
So that's why I assumed that she was
Yeah.
wearing gym shorts, which I thought was kind of strange. I was like, okay, she's just wearing gym shorts, like.
And they're Japanese gym shorts, and I don't know if they do this anymore, but yeah, at least in a lot of anime, I don't know if it was actually really done. The gym shorts are basically briefs, at least for girls.
Yeah, pretty much.
Hmm.
She's wearing panties. Yeah,
And there's a quick gag a little bit later where they get pulled off briefly, which
yeah,
also
that was
lends to why they put her in those because it just made that gag easier.
yeah. We actually Minamori grows into a robot.
Yeah. There's a little plot twist in this one because of the headbutting and or the touching of the ears. We don't know which. The robot comes out of Ninamori's head in this one.
Yeah, yeah. They never really explained why,
Mhm.
like what it
Well,
was.
I think it was the headbutt because you see the tops of their heads both turn red, like it was transferred when their heads butted up against
That
each
makes
other.
sense.
Hmm.
That makes sense. I didn't think of that, but that would make sense.
And
Uh,
this fight scene really sticks out because it is the only piece of music in the entire series that is not the pillows. It's a classical piece that I think is called Comedian's Gallop. I don't remember the composer's name, but it really gives it a very Warner Brothers kind of feel.
yes, yes. I loved this robot fight. I thought it was ridiculous. Like Minamori's robot is like a spider.
Hmm. Yeah, basically, it's a crab or a spider with all these legs. It's this
And
big center
she's
thing with these legs
in
that
the
come down.
center of it, like poor thing. She's just like hanging there, like I don't know what to do. As a
Well,
robot.
initially, it's I don't know what to do, and then Conti's trying to fight the robot, and that's how her shirts get pulled off because they get caught on Conti's head, and then she passes out at some point, as you would if you're being dragged around by this giant robot that just came out of your head.
And how it's resolved is the curry.
Yeah, the curry that Hadako dropped off for Nada ends up getting force fed to the robot. The robot gets sick and relieves himself of Minamori, and then goes to relieve himself of the curry over the side of the building, and that's when Nada had previously been thrown by the robot and gotten caught by Conti, who then shoots again Nada into the robot, taking care of it.
That was probably one of the funniest, most
Hmm.
ridiculous
Yeah,
moments in one of them in Fooli Coolies thus
and
far
this
was
is
the fight, then her turning into a robot,
yeah.
then her like being like thrown up or
Yeah.
whatever
Uh-huh.
out of the robot. And then at the end of it all, we see Mina Mori's in the play, and she's wearing glasses.
Yeah.
And that was the other thing is that she's wearing glasses
When she's
in
in Nada's room, yeah.
when she's in Naoto's room, and she says that's going to be our little secret. And because she's always wearing contacts when she's in class.
Yeah. And then he sees her on stage for the play, and she's got these glasses on, and she sticks her finger through the lens and says, "It's fake," or "They're
Yeah,
fake."
yeah, yeah. And
So it's
that's
a step. It's she's wearing frames now, not actual glasses, but it's a step. And I kind of see that as now Nina Mori kind of coming into herself a little more, being a little more open about who she is.
yeah. I after this episode, like Minamori tends to really kind of evolve more
Mhm.
and start to accept things that are happening and to try to be a force of good, I
Yeah.
think. On to episode 4.
As I said, this one is the baseball analogy writ large, to the point where Hadako is now his batting coach.
You can go on and explain episode
Well,
4.
it starts with the grandfather running the local baseball team, and they're in a slump because Hadako is playing for the opposing team as a pitcher, and she's just supernaturally good until they decide to bring Conti onto the team because he can fly, so he can catch anything. And again, nobody thinks it's weird that this robot is walking around. He's catching, he's retrieving the stray balls this time on the baseball field.
It cracked me up because I'm just like, there's a girl with a huge bass guitar, and then there's a random robot walking around, and no one's saying anything.
Yeah.
Everyone's just like, oh, it's normal. It's totally fine.
More so the robot than the bass. Okay, she carries a bass around. That's not necessarily that odd. You could kind of just accept that and whatever.
Yeah, but when she's playing baseball, like that's just a strange thing, know. And
this one also, it's really another sign of Naoto maturing and going more into his adolescence, because this is where we see him starting to have issues with his father.
Okay, this episode was super weird for me. Like, it was incestuous weird. Like, there's like a relationship going on. It's not incestuous so much, but it was more like, it was weird because Haruka is like all doing stuff with his pops, and then she's turning around and flirting like hardcore, like half naked hardcore flirting with Naota, like where she's not half naked but wearing like a nightie slip.
It's the only partial nudity in the series you see here.
What is going on in this freaking episode? Like I could barely stomach it. I was just like, oh my god.
Bear in mind that the series as a whole is in Naota's imagination.
Yeah.
So that's what he's seeing,
Yeah, but still, it's kind of weird.
It's not that these things are actually happening. It's that's his vision of what's actually his twist on what's actually happening, because he's a 12-year-old boy who just hit puberty.
Right. Yeah. But it's just weird. Like I don't know. I mean, because you're a guy, so you could be able to answer this, but did you like think like, oh yeah, my dad is totally going to like sleep with the girl that I'm interested in?
Well, not personally, but if there had been, and I was never in that situation, but had I been in his situation where I thought maybe there was something going on there, because when you have a crush, that intense of a crush, particularly at that age, you get very jealous.
That's true. Yeah,
so
I can.
If there's any suggestion to Naota that there's something going on between Kamon and Haruka, and Kamon definitely wanted Haruka.
Yeah.
So it's easy to create that suggestion in Naota's head, and that's going to automatically go to, there is something going on.
Yeah.
When in reality, Kamon's head just didn't work as well as Naota's did as an NO portal, as we find out, which is this.
This is the episode that things really start to come together. We get introduced.
This is all the science fiction.
That weird commander.
Amara with the Nori eyebrows.
Like those eyebrows are insane. I've never like crazy. Those eyebrows remind me of what's his name in Kill la Kill.
Yes. I think that was very influenced, at least visually. Well, I think it was
visually for sure influenced.
It's Gainax all over again. I mean, it was made by the guys who did Gurren Lagann, which is Gainax, and Fooli and Evangelion, it all kind of.
Yeah, and also in Gurren Lagann, they have those eyebrows as well.
When you said those eyebrows, I just had to chuckle, because there are like 4 characters who say those eyebrows in reference to Amara.
Yeah, that's kind of why I was like, those eyebrows. Like you walk in, and it's so funny because it's like if you see somebody and you're like, oh, those eyebrows. Like there's nothing else to say. Like all you can say about that one particular person is those eyebrows. Like that's it. So I love that this guy is tells Naoto that he has to be careful with Haruko, and she says that she's an older woman, and an older woman can have a strong effect on and a painful effect.
And I'm wondering who Amurao is in reality. Like, is he one of Naota's or one of Haruko's exes? Who's
And
just
that's
kind of
what I
hanging around?
kind of got, like, because of the way that they interact throughout this episode and then the next episode. Like, the way they interacted was very, very strange to me.
He's kind of this.
Um,
I get the feeling he's kind of this bitter ex who then sees
yes.
Naota crushing on Haruko and says, don't worry, kid, it's not worth it.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And this is where Mamimi says, "Let me leave my mark again."
Hmm.
So
Okay.
Mamimi wants to pee on Naota and
Some
claim her as a
fun.
territory.
There's also
So,
a really interesting storyline with Naota's father. Come on.
mhm.
There is there's a scene with Haruko and Kamon behind a screen with some dialogue that suggests that it's a sex scene.
Yes, that's one that I was like,
But
whoa,
if you
what is going on there?
later we find out that there is this robotic version of Kamon that she created,
Right.
and everything she's saying in that scene is actually a perfectly innocent thing about the robotic version, about the plug and
It's an electric massage. She's talking about giving him an electric massage,
mhm,
or she gives an electric massage or
yeah.
something.
She
And
gets
I
one
was
from
like,
the
oh, so she's got a vibrator.
yeah, it's the robotic Kamon who is doing this for her, which could maybe Robo Kamon is a reference to a vibrator. We don't know. That's an
That's what I
interesting
got. Like I totally was like,
thing.
all right, RoboCommon is her vibrator. That's what it is. Got it.
He's also incredibly creepy because there's a
Yeah,
scene where he talks to Nauta.
disturbing. Oh, he creeped me out. Like really. Like I had to be like, oh, I did not like that part.
And we shortly thereafter we go from the creepiest moment probably in the entire series to one of the most horrifying when he finds actual Kamon.
Yeah, and he was like watering him
He's dead
because
and,
he's all shriveled up.
dehydrated under the sink, and he pulls him out, puts him in the bath, and just rehydrates him. Apparently, that brings him back to life.
That is the weirdest thing. One of the weirdest things I've ever seen in anime, and I've watched quite a bit of anime, like 150, only 150 anime, but
I think you're a
still,
little more than this.
but still, like that is really bizarre. I mean, even more bizarre to me than Lane. Like that Lane doesn't even have that something as bizarre as that.
Lane isn't so much weird as it is just really complex.
Yeah, I could give it that. But anyway, we're going off topic.
Well,
So
yeah. And so, he revives Kamon, somehow ends up hitting the TV with a baseball bat, and then he's brought in, by Amurao, who is almost acting as like a cop in that scene,
yes,
questioning Nauta
hmm
about what happened. Because it is thought that Nauta hit his father with the bat when he actually... Did he swing at Robo Kamon, or did he just swing at the TV?
I think he swung it at Kamon.
He swung at Robo Kamon.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Cause he like ends up hitting him,
Hmm.
and then like that's when I think he discovers that he's a robot.
Right, and then he finds real Kamon under the sink.
Right, right. Yeah. Sorry, there was something on my screen.
Mhm.
um, and then he's all about he has to swing for the stars.
And just before then, Hadako has a line when he's, questioning her, "Who are you? What's going on here?" He really kind of presses Hadako for
For
some
answers.
answers in this one. She says,
Yeah.
I'm an illusion of your youth," because
You
that's
gotta say that
exactly what
again
she
because
is
you
in
were
the show.
breaking up. Say it again because you were breaking up.
When he's pressing her for answers, Hadako says, "I'm an illusion of your youth." Something about
Yeah.
your subconscious mind, and that's really
Yes.
what she is in the series.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, I wrote that down too.
Mhm.
Then she's telling uh Naoto that she's gonna teach him how to swing a bat.
And that scene when they're outside, they're talking about the bat, the swinging and all that. There's one of the best hidden frames. There's this thing on the wiki that has lists all of these hidden frames and things that are kind of subtly in the episodes that you can't really catch them until you see it multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
When having that conversation, there's this shot of Mamimi's eye right behind Hatiko, looking incredibly jealous.
Yeah, I did catch that. I did catch that actually. Yep.
Also, another one of the hidden frames when Hatiko is on their way to the baseball game, and she stops and she calls to Mamimi and Nauta down by the river again. Mamimi runs for the bike to go watch the game because it's going to be Conti's first game, and she worships Conti. She
Mhm.
pushes Nauta aside, goes to run for the Vespa to get a ride with Hatiko, and it's real subtle. But Nauta's hand ends up flying up her skirt, and he pulls her underwear off as she runs away.
What? I
Mhm.
didn't catch that.
Completely accidental. His
What?
hand just kind of flies up there and latches
No
on.
way. I did not
It's
catch that.
there's in the community. I posted that article with all the hidden frames.
I
Go
gotta
there
go.
and take a
I
look
gotta
at
go check
that.
that.
It,
That's
it, it
crazy.
shows it frame by frame.
Really?
Mhm.
Oh, I gotta check that out. That's crazy.
Mhm. So
So
they go. There's
after, go ahead.
there's the big game, and I don't think they really get into who wins because all of a sudden there's this satellite that's crashing to Earth
Yeah.
that Amaro and Kitsurabami, his second in command, are tracking. And
Yes.
I love Kitsurabami. She's a minor character, but
She's great. I loved
she's
her.
one of those audience perspective characters who just says everything you're thinking about Amaro.
Yeah.
But
And so we get that he has to swing his bat.
Hadako tells him, the only way that we're going to save the world here is if we both take a swing at this thing. And she pulls a guitar out of his head, this Gibson Flying V, out of his head. And I again, one of those kind of cringeworthy lines. I didn't know boys felt like this on the inside.
Yes. I have that.
You shouldn't touch me like that from behind or something like that. Notice
Yeah,
says.
yeah.
So she pulls his flying V out of his head, and they both line up for it.
Did you catch everyone's bloody nose when they pull out
No,
the guitar?
no.
Yes. Everyone has a bloody nose.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another great Warner Brothers moment where Hadako is riding her Vespa down the side of, I think it's like a water tower they're on. Or no, it's the top of the Medical Mechanica building.
Yes, yes.
She's
Mm-hmm.
riding like a straight cliff face down on this Vespa and says, if we might not get through this one, if not, it's been nice knowing you. Kind of thing. Another great Bugs Bunny moment. Because
Yeah.
Hadako really is Bugs Bunny.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I could see that.
Hmm.
And then when he swings the bat,
Hmm.
what's his name? Emero's eyebrows fall off.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a great scene at the very end, just a quick thing where they cut to Mamimi, who had been on top, on sitting on Conti's shoulders, up on top of this water tower,
Hmm.
saying, basically worshiping the thing that's flying to Earth that's going to kill everybody because she worships destruction. You know,
Yes.
um, I forget exactly the dialogue, but she's basically saying, "Come to us, O great comet of destruction in
Yes,
this
yes,
service."
yes.
And he swings and he sends the comet back, and they cut to back to Mamimi, and she says,
Pac
"Takun,
really
he really
swung the
swung
bat.
the bat."
Yeah.
And she says it very um, sadly,
Yeah.
and it's when she realizes that he's growing up.
Yeah.
He's not the cuddly little toy anymore,
Yeah.
and that's the exact moment she loses interest in him.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, she pretty much after this she lets him go.
Hmm.
She doesn't really go after him
Right.
anymore. She stays into her own like shell essentially. All right, we're on to
Number
episode
five.
5. Huh?
On to 5, which starts with an odd flash forward.
This was like a John Woo.
Yeah, the preview for this episode actually references John Woo.
Yeah, yeah. They're talking about snipers, and then Haruko's playing with Cayman, and
There's a
and
scene.
the channel is going on, and they're like watching a movie or something, and
Well, it
the
starts with Hadako and Nauta in the grass, and he's got a gun, and she's got her base, and it's like they're playing some kind of war game.
right.
And
It's
there's
really
no setup, you don't know what's going on, and then it cuts to Nauta and his grandfather watching TV.
right. And
And
then
then, so this, I think the scene with them lying in the grass was a flash forward, and now we're getting the setup of how they got there.
that would make sense.
hmm That's when Kamon takes another pass at Hadako. How can I forget her name? And that's the best Lupin reference I have ever seen. She's sitting on the bed. He jumps out of his clothes, and a baseball bat, or no, a baseball bat, a boxing glove
Yes,
comes from
yes,
down there and hits him.
yeah.
Exact reference, and I never caught this until I was looking on YouTube at an old Lupin ad.
Mhm.
That exact scene is in a Lupin ad.
I
That
didn't
was
know that.
straight out of Lupin.
I didn't even realize that was a Lupin
And
catch.
and um, at another point, Kamon references Lupin talking about his jacket. Now they had criticized his jacket, and he says,
Yeah,
"You
yeah,
like you like the red one, the Castle Cagliostro one,
yes,
which is
yes,
some kind
yes.
of preppy."
That I caught. Yeah.
So it was just a great direct Lupin reference.
I love that also when Haruko's talking to Naota, and
Mhm.
then Haruko changes into Elvis,
Yeah.
and then into the Red Hot Chili Peppers,
and,
and then to Rage Against the Machine,
and she
which
goes
it's
to
totally fitting to me that he's in this transition period of puberty. That's
I
when
never caught that.
you really start to think about music wise. Like for me
Yeah.
personally, I really started to think about what music I really enjoy
Uh-huh.
and
Same
really
here.
started listening to at the age
Yeah.
of 12. When
Yeah.
I was 12, that's when I discovered ska. That's when I
hmm
started listening to ska. That's when I started listening to dancehall. That's when I also really learned about the grunge scene,
hmm
and really was paying
That's
attention to what was going on with that. I remember,
84 is about, yeah, Ralph and I started getting into music. Yeah, that's true.
yeah, so crazy, huh? So I
But
caught that.
that scene also has another Western reference, another reference that they Westernized. Because she's listing all of these bands, and then she throws in Richard Cheese. And in the subversion, it's another artist, but Richard Cheese I just love because he's such an obscure reference. Do you know who he is?
No, actually, I don't know
He
who.
he does big band covers of heavy metal songs,
Oh, cool! I want to check that
and
out.
it's very not just heavy metal, but different kind of rock, harder songs, but
Yeah,
big
no,
band
that's
style.
cool. Please send that info
Mhm.
to me. That's awesome.
Uh,
Um, and
and
then
and we also
Haruko's
see
making out with
oh yeah, yeah,
Naota
Haruka Nada
and
well,
watching.
he walks in on her with Nada walks in on Hadako with Miu Miu, communicating to her superiors. She kind of jumps on him, I think just to distract him.
Right,
Kind of you didn't see that, just to kind of get his mind off of what he just walked in on.
right.
And then there is a great reference to current robot in Nada's head, which is a gun. The hammer comes at the back of his head, pushing his head forward. He ends up kissing Hadako. That's how it happens.
Yes, yes.
It's instead of a horn, it's actually the hammer of a gun that comes at the back of his head and pushes him up.
Yes,
And you see the barrel, and you see it get cocked, and it's just this great ticking clock for the rest of the episode.
yes.
Of course, that's when Kamon walks in on them.
And the
I
dad is
love
wearing
that scene.
he's wearing a Nazi jacket.
Well, just before then, when he first walks in on them, he's got the
Oh
typical
yeah.
the green blazer on, and they show a close up of his face after when he sees it, and he turns every color in the rainbow.
Yes, yes. They were.
And this close up of his face, which I love. And then that explains why they're playing a war game in the beginning of the episode because he challenges them to this
Right,
to
right, right, right. Yeah.
maintain his honor after just walking in on them messing around. And yeah, they put Kimon in a Nazi uniform, which was a bold choice.
I thought that was wow. That what a
Even I mean,
twist.
Japan was part of the Axis, but even Germany really doesn't like to admit to that.
But that was, I mean, for them to do that, that was pretty
Yeah.
out there.
Mhm. Also, one of the best sight gags in the episode is shortly thereafter.
Yes.
The
Um,
height of all of their experimentation with all different styles of animation.
my favorite style that they pulled out was the South Park style when they're in the salon.
They show
Um,
Amuro in his
yes, and
barber shop, and
they're done.
it's animated exactly like a South Park episode,
It's amazing.
Mhm. Down
It's
to the voices. And I doubt that they brought in Schreier Matt to do the voice, but they did a perfect impression of him. Because I
when
don't think
he
Funimation could have hired Schreier Matt.
no, but when he's in the salon, you mean?
Yeah, when they cut the South Park, he even does a South Park style voice that sounds exactly like a character that Schreier Matt would
Yeah.
have done.
Mhm. Oh, I like all right, sorry. My notes are getting
So they,
mixed.
they so that's Haruko and Amuro go a bit back and forth, and you find out they've got a bit of a history of some sort, and there's some contention there. She doesn't like him. He's bitter and wants something from her.
Yeah.
More credence to my theory that he's the bitter ex.
Well, what is it that Haruko says to him, "I'm not a kid anymore. I can buy my own insurance."
Well, he says that to Haruko. I'm not a
Oh
kid
no, that's
anymore.
right. Yeah, yes, yes, yes.
Because Amuro's whole bit is, talking about how he's a grown up. And he in the symbolic version, according to that paper that I posted, represents what Nauta sees as maturity.
Uh,
What to a 12-year-old, this is what a man is.
right. That would make sense. I was actually thinking of something completely different. I was thinking that Haruko was the figment of this guy's um imagination as well.
Okay.
And he like somehow there was this cross and he wanted to be with his imagination still, his imaginative girlfriend.
He's another guy who now Hadako is his fantasy girl as well as Nauta's.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
that's what I was thinking. And Haruka's like, what, I'm done with you, I'm over it. And he's like, oh yeah, but I'm not a kid anymore, I can buy my own insurance, like trying to be like, oh, I'm older now,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
you should totally want me, something
And
like that.
in the barber shop, he's talking about how he wants, something that looks manly but not too. I forget the exact line, but basically, it doesn't look like he's trying too hard.
Right, right, right,
I
yeah.
mean, that would appeal to an older woman or something of that nature.
And I like that he loses his eyebrows.
hmm
He's like, eyebrows just fall off.
Because to him, the eyebrows are this protection against Tadako.
I think he's compensating. That's what his
Yeah.
eyebrows are.
Um,
It's his compensation
hmm.
for something. Because she even says small as usual when she hits him and
Well,
something like
she needs another guitar, so she pulls one out
right,
of his head, but it
right.
ends up being this little tiny flying bee that is about that big, about the size of a cigarette pack.
And she says small
Oh, as
as
usual.
which is really funny.
hmm
And Haruka is dressed as a Playboy bunny.
hmm But just before then, this is the big fight at the end. But before then, Kitsurubami is sent out to take out Kanti, to shoot Kanti, because he's a medical mechanica robot, and there's this plot in which medical mechanica is going to try to take over the world,
Uh-huh.
and Amuro's trying to stop them, and so he sends Kitsurubami out to kill Kanti, and she's got this ginormous gun on the top of a car. She's lining us out, and Kitsurubami calls him a cyborg.
Yes. Oh, confusing cyborgs with robots is a common mistake.
Mamimi, who's standing about 10 feet away, says this. I loved that. Because
Yes.
it is a common mistake.
Yes, it is. It's awesome. And Mimimi is very jealous
Mhm.
in this episode.
Yeah.
You can see.
Well, she hasn't quite let go of Naudi yet. She's in the process.
Yeah.
She only recently decided, well, okay, I can't do that anymore. But she's still kind of getting over it.
Yeah. And then we end up with the Pirate King.
Well, before then, there's a couple of things I wanted to talk about.
Go ahead.
A couple of the more disturbing things in the entire series, and they're not really addressed as such. Gaku, Manashi, and Inamori are driving along the side of the river in this truck delivering booze.
Yes.
These three grade school kids delivering booze. I think it's Masashi's father or his family owns the liquor store. So you have
Yeah.
grade school kids driving a truck and delivering booze. And then in the scene where Mamimi basically tells Naoto, we can't, mess around anymore. You've grown up too much. You're not a kid anymore. She takes this Uzi that he had during, the war games. It's a toy gun, but she points it at herself while she's talking.
Oh yeah. I remember that.
She
That's
stands
really
there
good that
talking
you
with
point
this
that
toy
out.
gun pointed at herself.
That it seems like she's kind of got like suicidal tendencies.
Well, you mentioned she's depressive, so it fits.
Yeah. So that totally
Especially
fits.
at this point where she's, Taku and the cat isn't really, doing it for her anymore. You don't really see the
Right.
cat around much anymore.
Right.
And now
Well,
she's had, and now
yeah.
she's had, hmm? And now
I
she's
would
had to
say
let go of,
that.
and now she's had to let go of Nauda. So she's adrift now. She's got nothing.
Yeah, she has nobody to console her, so she
Mhm.
doesn't have anyone to rely on. So she's like, "This is it. I might as well just be done with it." Essentially.
And she says, you and Haruko are together now. She's assuming that
Yeah.
something going on between Nauda and Haruko, and he says, how can I like someone who's insane? Which I just loved.
Yeah. He does say that.
And although I think we all have at one time or another.
Of
and
course, right?
and then it gets interesting because we go back to the gun in Nauda's head, cocking again, and then he suddenly grabs Mamimi's hand and practically pulls her along to this restaurant because he wants to go on a date with her suddenly.
Yeah.
Because he's getting older and he's getting to that point where he's, connecting all of these things and starting to really get interested in girls. And here is the nice, convenient option.
Crazy option.
Well, yes, but also convenient.
Yeah.
Because it's either her or the older woman who he's been chasing but, hasn't really gotten anything from.
Right.
And I don't think Ninamori's really on his radar at this point.
No, she's not. She's definitely not. She's, at least to me, he thinks more of Mamimi, overall. And he even says in the earlier episode that he's going to be next by her side forever.
Yeah, and then too, he
promises to be by her side forever.
After the fight, you hear these sirens coming, and Haruko and Kanti hightail it out of there before the cops show up, and Nauda says, I wondered what I could do for Mamimi. I decided to stay by her side.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he drags her to this diner, this cafe, so they can go on a real date. And that's when she finally says, I can't do these things with you. We don't have that kind of relationship. And then the gun goes off. Quite literally.
I didn't even think of that. That's a good analysis there.
That was Nauda's, it was Nauda getting closer to puberty, and finally, he's getting interested in girls for real, and he gets shot down.
Yeah.
And then the gun goes off.
Huh.
And it creates what I think is probably the coolest robot in the entire series. It's basically this building-sized cowboy robot with this, cowboy hat and this shotgun.
Pirate King.
Well, it's not the Pirate King just yet.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
We see the Pirate King twice. We first get Amura's version, who is kind of this really big cut guy, made of electricity with his big hair. And then in 6 we see the real Pirate King, but we'll get to that. So there's the big robot fight for this one, which is Kanti and Hadako fighting this building-sized robot, and Kanti is being piloted by Nauta again.
Yes.
Because when they're on top of the building, was created by the gun going off when Nauta got shot down, so they're up, stories high and on this building that's walking, and Mimi starts calling to Tasku to come rescue her because
Yeah,
he's
I
her
remember.
savior.
Mhm.
And Nauta gets pissed off and says, don't call for my brother, I'm here. And then he
Yeah.
calls Kanti. And
Yes.
that's the second time when um, Kanti turns red at the mention of Tasku.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point.
So the big robot fight happens, and as you said, Hadako is dressed like a Playboy bunny for some reason and surfing on her base.
I just think they did it, to kind of further along the image, if you will,
Mhm.
of
Well, I think,
Hanukkah.
yeah, and it's also that's an anime joke. That you have for an anime fan, that's a clear joke of the Playboy bunny image. Because
Hmm.
how many bunny girls have you seen in anime?
Oh, all the time, and that also is the symbolic, like, if you will,
The
uh,
perfect girl.
of your crush.
Yeah,
Like,
the
whenever
ideal
it's
woman,
like
right?
the absolute moment where you see your crush, like
Hmm.
they're in like a very sexy
Hmm.
outfit, Playboy bunny, if you will. You know, yeah, definitely.
And we finally get the last instrument. I think
Yes.
it's in this one, right?
Atomisk.
Yeah. Conti shoots this. Red Conti shoots this beam from his face, from his screen, reaches up and pulls out a red Gibson EB0 bass, which is Atomisk's bass. And Atomisk is the Pirate King, who was established earlier, is the one that Hadako is after. He's got the ability to pull. Well, they've established that there's this thing in the series called NO, uses the distinct thought processes of both sides of the brain to open up a portal that you can pull things through, like physical objects.
Yeah.
And Atomisk has so much NO that he can steal entire cities, entire planets practically, through the portal in his head.
Yes.
So he
Mhm.
has this immense power, and it's what Hadako is after, and that's why she wanted to open up the portal in Nauta's head to try to
Get that
lure him out
power.
because he was captured by Medical Mechanica.
Yes. Yeah, that's when we discover the real motive
Hmm.
behind Haruka's.
And Hadaka's
Uh,
really the villain.
yes. Mhm. Haruka's never really been on. It's
Hmm.
all. She's been using
Yeah,
Naota the whole
yeah.
time.
And I
And
think
now Naota's gonna grow up.
Atomisk is the guy that Haruka's really interested in. He's the guy her age that she really likes and the
Yep.
one she's trying to get with.
Yep.
And of course, to Nauta, that means that she's this alien who's using him to get this other guy, and he's
And
twisted the whole story.
Naota's pretty bummed about the whole thing,
Hmm.
as we
So,
see actually going into the next episode.
so giant robot fight. How did was this? How did this one end? Was it Nauta going through the sign, or is it the next one?
Um, I going through the sign.
Yeah, he goes. There's this sign for this billboard for this movie, and Nauta, after
Yes,
being shot,
that's it.
that was how it ended. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
because there's this billboard for this action movie, and Nauta had just been fired out of Conti again. And
Yes.
he
Yes.
comes back and he goes through this sign right actually at the barrel of the gun in the picture in the sign is where he goes through.
Yep.
Collapses down again in a puddle or in a pile, covered in something sticky and smelling, like in
Yeah.
the end of two.
Exactly.
Gets stepped on
So,
by
okay, go ahead.
gets stepped on by Hadako, who's trying to look into Conti's eyes because it turns out that Conti is Atomisk,
Yeah.
this pirate king that she's been chasing.
Mhm.
And Mamibi just looks down at Nauta and says, "Ouch."
Shot down.
Well, because she still cares about him, she still feels for him.
Right.
He just
But
got
not in the same way.
destroyed.
Yeah. I actually thought about something.
Hmm?
So, maybe it's not that he's really being shit out. Like, maybe, uh, it's wet dreams.
Interesting. Okay. It's another way to look at it.
Because you know what? I mean, like, she's like, oh, that's smelly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, like
Well,
I just
well,
thought about it and I was like,
the
maybe
the the
maybe
being
that's what
launched
it is.
the being launched from Conti, I definitely can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like if we think of Conti as his manhood,
yeah, yeah. Well,
you know,
the ideal, what he's been, made to live up to, is brought up.
right, right, and
Yeah,
you
and
know,
being shot
maybe
at. Yeah, we don't need to get
maybe
more
that's
graphic about that.
maybe that's what it
But it's
is.
an interesting theory. Yeah.
You know, because I was just thinking about it. Like every time the robot is done with him, he's
Yeah,
done. You
yeah,
know,
and he's spent. Um,
completely. So
going back to Akata, he said, any interpretation is is
it's
a guy's
fair
guess.
fair game. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So maybe that's what it is. You know,
yeah.
like he's having wet dreams
Mhm.
or he's playing with himself, and that's
Oh,
when he's done.
well, there aren't really any obvious references to that in this, so it would fit. Would have to be a reference to that in this one.
Well,
And given the storyline, there would have to be a masturbation reference somewhere, and
you
I
know,
can't really think of any others.
yeah. I mean, because like when the robots are fighting, it's like to me, it's like he's like all of his testosterone and
Uh,
everything is
and explains the hand in episode one.
right, and it's like all exploding and
Yeah.
something.
All right.
So,
On to episode six.
on to episode 6.
Love the
um,
beginning of this one because it starts in class with Mia June, their teacher, who is referenced here and there, basically a comic character who's just kind
yeah,
of abused by the events of the series. And she's giving this lecture on how to use chopsticks.
chopsticks. Yes,
And then Gaku goes on this long thing about how he likes sporks.
yes. Oh, live long and prosper.
Hmm?
Leonard Nimoy.
Oh, what about?
He died
Oh
last.
yeah, yeah, I know. It seems
Yeah,
random to bring
but
it up now.
Spork. I
Oh,
thought
oh,
of
Spock.
Spork.
Okay, Spock. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you know,
Hmm.
but I just thought about
Yeah,
that.
it took
Like,
a second for me to connect it. I
yeah.
got a kick out of how he's going off about how great sporks are.
Yeah.
And
Um,
then now it talks about how the town is now covered in this mist that
yes.
you can't see anything outside of the town, and it just makes it feel like there's nothing out there, which is another great reference to him getting older and starting to feel like there's nothing for him in his town.
Yeah, he's ready to move on.
He's bored with home.
Yeah. And the hands of an executioner.
Hmm.
He's talking
The,
about how the hands,
the giant cowboy robot in the last episode when he
yes,
was
the
defeated
hands,
turns into this giant hand hovering over the iron.
yeah, it's there. It's like going to grab
Mhm.
the iron,
Yeah.
and it's a hand grabbing an iron, and it's talking about how the wrinkles need to be ironed out.
Medical
So,
Mechanic's plan is to iron out the wrinkles in everybody's brain. And
yes.
which it goes back to an old I think it's an old Chinese belief that the wrinkles in the brain are what allow you to think.
Huh.
Yeah.
I actually, okay, so I interpreted this as it's time to grow up, it's time to
Mhm.
stop playing, it's time
Yes.
to stop using your creativity and start, becoming an adult
Mhm.
and taking on
Thinking
responsibility.
smooth. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
how I
Which makes sense because Amuro is dead set on stopping them from doing this, and Amuro is the man-child.
right, yes. Oh, I love it. I love this analysis. This is
Mhm.
great.
And
And
then
so,
Mamimi meets Takun number 3. Or
yes,
4, actually, if you count the original Tasuke.
her little robot
This,
Takun.
this little robot she finds in the water. And she does this adorable kind of sideways walk when she first sees it. Because it's kind of skittering by the water, and she looks at it, and she just kind of walks sideways towards it. I can't
Yeah,
really describe the walk, but it's completely adorable.
yeah.
And
And
then it's the she feeds it. Well, it tries to grab her phone away from her,
doesn't it
and
eat her phone?
Hmm? Or maybe it sees it, it picks it up,
Yeah.
and she tries to get it away, and she finally gives in. She looks at her address book, sees Tasku's name, finally just hands the phone over, and then it's the line I quoted earlier. All right, but you're responsible then. From now on, your name is Takun.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's totally like her next vessel,
Yeah,
emotional vessel to like
exactly.
take over
Hmm. And this one feeds on electronics and just gets bigger and
and
bigger. She
bigger and bigger.
starts with one phone, it gets a little bit bigger, and then she brings in this armload of cell phones that she stole from her classmates, and it basically turns into the size of like a large dog. And then she has her revenge list. Early in an earlier episode, she'd been splashed by someone on a bike who'd driven past, and you get the idea. Everyone who has wronged her in any possible way is on this list.
Yes. Mhm.
And she uses her new Takun to get revenge by eating their cars and anything metal that they have until it becomes the size of a building, and you find out that it's the terminal core. It's the last piece that Medical Mechanica needs to begin their plan.
Mhm. Yep. And uh then we also see Naota, and Naota is drinking this soda,
Mhm.
and they said bitter makes you feel more grown up. Brain needs glucose, and that was Emerald.
Hammerhouse says this throughout the series. Nowadays tastes in soda drastically changes. Because
Yes.
he starts the first episode saying he doesn't like sour stuff,
Yes.
and then a couple episodes later he tries it, and now he's drinking
Making
bitter.
squash.
Yeah, and
Yeah, he's
he's
doing
like
something sour.
in the last episode when Mamimi's telling him, yeah, we're done, and you must be with Haruko now. She says that you like the kind with the pulp.
Yeah.
So his taste in soda is getting more bitter.
Yeah, he's starting to shy away from the really sweet, typical kiddish
Yeah,
things. He's
exactly.
starting to his taste is growing.
Hmm.
And
And then Amuro says, you, your brain needs glucose. The sweet is better
yes,
because
uh-huh.
he's the man child.
Yeah. And then we see whatchamacallit, I think it's Amuro is after the Pirate King.
Yeah, Amuro. Well, basically, Amuro is trying to stop um, Haruko from freeing the Pirate King because the Pirate King will basically help Medical Mechanica in taking over the world.
Yes. And and then he explains to Naota, says Pirate King was captured by Medical Mechanica and she's in love with him, that's why she came here.
Mhm.
And so Naota's like, well, that's pretty much like I'm being used.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not really, she doesn't really care about me. It's just more about her own objectives.
Hmm.
And
Again, jealous 12-year-old who sees his crush pursuing this other guy
yeah.
and turns
And
it
you,
into that.
and then you've got Mamimi who's just continuing to sop along, if you
Hmm.
will, and
And
just
feed the terminal core.
giant robot.
Uh-huh. And in the middle of all this, we have another manga scene
Yes.
with another great break in the fourth wall where they go through this
That's
much shorter manga scene.
When Haruka comes back,
Yeah.
she starts saying the like he said, "Oh, I thought you were on vacation." She said, "Vacation, alienation, Japanimation, manga, kanga, naked lunch, Hawaiian punch." I love that. That was one of my favorite parts. And you know what? She reminded me of Edward from
Yeah.
Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah. Say that again. You froze in the middle of that.
Oh,
The quote
when she comes
get from
back,
the quote to Cowboy Viva.
alienation,
Yeah.
Japanimation, manga, kanga, naked lunch, Hawaiian punch.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said that she reminds me of Edward in that moment.
Oh,
And
yes, yes.
what I've caught on is that she reminds me a lot like Edward in certain
The
moments,
word salad, yes.
you know.
I was actually
Um,
just trying to think of that line the other day. I couldn't remember the whole quote.
Yeah, I wrote it down because I loved it. It's one
Mhm.
of my favorite quotes that she
And
said.
then at the end of the manga section,
I
someone
no, I literally wrote, "What is going on? What is going on in this?" Like I
someone basically says, you know, we didn't do it again because it was so expensive, but then we get criticized for being lazy, so we have to do it again.
Yeah, and then he goes, "Oh, it's hard to be in manga form," and then they go on like, "What does Fooli Cooli mean?
Hmm.
Fooli Cooli, Fooli Cooli, Fooli." It's like all going on and on. I'm like,
And
ah,
in the context of the series, obviously Fooli Cooli has no actual meaning. In the context, it, it it basically means some kind of sexual conduct. It's of different levels.
I thought it was more of like a sexual arousal or
It could mean
feeling,
that too.
like the
Uh,
awakening of your sexual being. That's kind of what I got from it.
I think it kind of could mean any of those. It was probably used in all of those contexts.
Yeah, like Fooli Cooli is whatever like makes you feel horny. I don't know, for the lack of a better way to call it. Because when they were going on and on, I was like, oh, okay, now I get what's going on here. And then Haruka actually says to Naoto, "You're just a kid."
Yeah. At the very end, when she finally rejects him
Yes,
for the
when
last time.
she tells him, "I'm out," like I've got to go find the Pirate King. He's gone. That's the whole purpose for me being here.
Yeah. Before we get to that, I just noticed in my notes with regard to Robot Takun, he really represents Mamimi getting more and more disturbed.
Yes.
It's kind of
So
her sanity slipping away.
totally reminds me of Paranoia Agent.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Totally reminds me of Paranoia Agent, where you've got what was the name of the doll?
Of the little pink rabbit. I know, I knew he was
Uh,
talking about, I can't think of the name.
I don't know, more
But it was
something.
the previous character that the designer who started the whole thing had created
Right.
and became so
And I
popular.
don't want to give away Paranoia Agent,
Yeah,
but it totally reminds me of Paranoia
yeah,
Agent. So that's what I referenced when I saw Mamimi feeding the robot
yeah,
and it becoming this giant dog.
yeah.
Um,
There's also a great scene where at the end of five, Nauda and Haruko had run off together, and Ninamori finds them on this bench, kind of crashed out, and she just
that's
looks at them.
that's here at the end of episode 6. You mean?
It's in six, yeah, but
Yeah,
I,
where they're talking
I,
about
yeah,
ramen.
but I hadn't set it up. At the end of five, they ran off together. So in six, Ninamori finds them, and she just looks down, just kind of half shakes her head, and walks away.
Yeah,
And it wasn't just, and you could see, and this is, what I love about the animation in this. You can see in her eyes that she's really disappointed.
yeah,
She doesn't really react because it's Nina Mori. She doesn't really react to anything. But there's just a subtle expression on her face where she's really upset about it.
yeah, for sure. I also wrote down Minimori has become more human and emotional.
Mhm.
We see that more so in this
Yeah.
episode where she's also grown up
Yeah,
more.
this is also where she explains where her parents were splitting up, and she took them aside and basically just explained her
Talks to
feelings on the
them.
whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So unlike Mamimi, who is running away from her problems and
Yes.
turning
She's
into a giant
confronting
robot
them head
dog,
on. Yeah.
Nina Mori is directly confronting her problems.
Yes. And so the terminal core just continues to grow and grow and grow, and Mamimi's depression essentially is eating
Yeah.
everything. And then uh, Haruko wakes up Naota and says, "Sleep time's all over. It's the
Just before
climax."
this, Adamus and Kitsubami he'd been talking about the terminal core, and we didn't know what it was until they're driving along the road and they see the giant robot dog that Mamimi had created.
Yes. And
It's
they
the
say,
terminal
"That's
core,
the core."
and
That's when we
yeah,
identify it.
yeah, that's when Haruko wakes up Nada and says it's the climax.
Yeah.
So giant
And
robot fight.
yes, and the hand is ironing out all the
Mm-hmm.
wrinkles.
Throughout the fight, Amara was finally giving his last speech to Naota, trying to get him to snap out of it and to get over his crush effectively.
Yeah. Mhm.
And he's having none of it. He just in the middle walks over to Haruka and puts his arms around her.
Yeah.
And and Haruka says, I have to use you one last time.
Yeah. And then they fight, and then I have learned to think smooth. I love that line.
Amara was explaining Medical Mechanica's plan and basically telling Haruko, how can you do this to the world? And she says, I don't know, I guess they'll have to think smooth.
Yeah. You have to
He doesn't care. She just wants Atomisk's power.
Yeah. And I love the fight has the I Think I Can song.
Love that song.
And the Pirate King is a phoenix.
Mm-hmm. We find out that the Pirate King is actually this giant energy bird. Mm-hmm. Just before then, there's a great moment where Naota finally realizes that finally steps past the crush, kind of doesn't get over it, but kind of moves past it.
Well, it's kind of like, you rise above the ashes type of thing. And he's emotionally now been destroyed essentially because his crush left him, blah blah blah. But now he's having like a rebirth, if you will.
Well, not after. It was before she left, but during the fight when he switches sides.
Oh yes. Mhm.
Throughout the series, the instruments are basically used to represent different stages in development. The guitar is the kid. The Haruko's bass is its suggestion is that it's adolescence. Her bass represents adolescence, and Atomisk's bass represents adulthood.
Yes.
So at one point, and I forget exactly what the setup was, but Naota ends up with a double neck that is a combination of his guitar and Atomisk's bass.
Ah, that's interesting.
He flies at Haruko with it to take her out, and Amara saying, we can gather the outsiders and take them down, which means nothing in the we don't get any lore or backstory for who the outsiders are.
Right.
But he's encouraging him to take down Haruko. He's flying at her top speed with this instrument, set to destroy. Gets within 10 feet of her, stops dead. Says, I love you. Kisses her. And that's what causes Atomisk to emerge.
Yeah, that's right.
The real Atomisk, who is a bird.
Yep.
And I loved the animation in that part. Just the level of detail, and what is basically a cataclysm. Atomisk's arrival is causing everything to float and sort of, there's no gravity left. And everything's swirling around in this great apocalyptic vision.
Yeah. It's awesome. And then Haruka, after all of this, she says, I lost him again. Do you want to come along? And then she says, forget it. You're a kid.
Yeah, he doesn't have a chance to respond. And she says, forget it. You're still just a kid.
Yeah.
And so she runs off, and everything is just level.
Left her guitar, though.
Yeah. Everything is just level. The whole city of Mabase is just in ruins. And there's this shot of Naota with the bass on his back, looking out over the ruins, and then Mamimi pops up with the camera.
And takes a
picture of him. And I love the detail on her face in that scene. It's the last time we see Mamimi, and it's the most detailed character. I think it's probably the most detailed drawing in the entire series.
Is the picture of her face.
Yeah, when she pops up to take the photo. Which ends up, being this iconic photo that wins this. We find out wins this contest.
Yeah.
And I loved Naota's closing monologue. He once again says, nothing amazing happens here. Everything is ordinary. We crossed the bridge as usual, and before we knew it, the seasons had changed.
That's perfect.
Loved that, and it makes me wonder if that was coming from older Naota. I mean, it suggested that a few months had passed. But it almost sounds like...
That's what I was thinking, too.
But it almost sounds like, if you remember the Wonder Years, that was Daniel Stern. Like, that was adult Naota looking back on it.
Yeah. Well, you think about it, he also... Haruka left the guitar. So that's still his childhood. It's still with him. but it's time to move on. Like he's looking out at everything. It's all
That
changed. It's all different. But is it
okay.
really changed and is it really different? Because even though everything is leveled in
Mhm.
Mabase, like it's still the same.
That's an interesting way to look at it, because well, basically, as he's delivering the speech, we see this, him, Gaku, Manashi, and Minamori walking home, and there's this little exchange between him and Minamori that kind of suggests that they're going to get together.
Yeah,
And
which would
then,
be which would be the most logical
yeah,
setup for him is to
he's
go
moved
after.
on, he's matured, yeah. And then the camera finds its way into his bedroom, and you see the magazine with the photo that Mamimi had just taken. And you see it had won a contest, and then it just pans over to the base, and he's explaining that Mamimi left town to become a photographer,
Yeah,
and that was the last he'd heard of her.
yeah,
And I would love to see a catch up with her.
like a spin-off,
I would love to see just what,
like an OVA.
yeah, and I guess leaving it open like that is better, because what are her odds?
Well,
It's you
at
could
this
look at it.
point, you I thought of it this way that he was like done with being her crutch,
Oh yeah.
like he wanted to be there for her and then she didn't see him that way anymore and he said, "You know what? Maybe this isn't the best decision for me."
Yeah.
And I think if we're focusing on the main character as Naruto, then there's really no point
Oh
to
no, no.
further
There's
inquire,
no
what happened to Mimimi.
yeah, there's no point in terms of the story. I'm just curious, because there's two possibilities with her. She could have been successful, or more likely she wasn't. More likely her story got even more tragic.
Yeah, I
And
I think
I
I think
always
the
wonder
story
about
got
that.
more tragic.
Yeah. But
But I don't think that
well,
it would have
there's no
been
reason to really do it. I would just love, just I would
some sort of closure.
more likely I would like to get the writer's opinion on what do you think happened to Mamimi.
Well,
Then
I
again,
don't
leaving it
think
open
they
is better.
wanted to. I don't think they
Yeah.
wanted to put her in there
Yeah,
because,
there was no point to it. You're right, because Nauta is the main character.
but no, not only that, but I mean, Mamimi, from the way that we see her and to how she was feeding that depression and how big the robot got,
Hmm.
he's not going to get any better.
No, no.
you know, unless some sort of external force, which yeah, she moved, but
Mhm.
like even then, like her
Unless she
internal
actively does something to improve,
right.
right?
So I don't think that we can infer that there would be any sort of positive ending for her, and this
Mhm.
is kind of more of an anime that's trying to take a positive
Yeah,
ending.
right.
You know?
Well, yeah, positive, but also fairly open, because
And open, yeah,
after he explains that Mamimi went off to become a photographer and he hasn't heard from her since, camera pans over. He's still got Haruka's bass, and just one note on the bass, and cut. And
yeah,
I see my interpretation of that is he's moved on, but he's always going to carry those feelings with him.
yeah, of
He still has
course,
the bass. He's always
yeah,
those feelings are always going to be a part of him.
yeah,
And
for sure.
also, it's adolescence calling. It's the next stage of his life that he's moving into.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure.
But overall, I think just speaking about the series as a whole, what really strikes me, particularly this time, this series has more character development than probably 90% of the animes I've seen.
You
Not
need
just
to
now.
watch some other anime.
Well, possibly. But Nauta develops tremendously throughout it. Mamimi completely disintegrates.
Mhm.
Um, Minamori goes from what could have been a broken life to really pulling yourself together. Even Conti has a personality.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a single line, but he has a personality and a character, a story arc.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that I loved about the show is that even though it was a small amount of time, they were able to all have a moment.
And
Huh?
you seem to have a better opinion of it now than the last time we spoke.
I do. Well, I watched the whole series now. I mean,
Okay.
I put the
Because we
time in to watch it, and
well,
I think it has to be watched all together.
Mhm.
If you watch it in pieces, you won't get it, you know.
And when I talked on Thursday, you were kind of down on it. You were like, kind of, what the fuck?
Well, I kind of feel like I gave it a little more time to digest,
Okay.
and I really enjoyed the fact that it's a coming of age, uh, entering adolescence period in life.
Mhm.
So I get it, I
Yeah.
definitely get it.
And
Um,
I think it's interesting. This took you some time to really wrap your head around.
yes,
And you said that Lane you understood the first time you saw it. So
yeah.
I'm thinking about, for those who don't know, Serial Experiments Lane.
I got it like that.
And
So
for those who don't know, Serial Experiments Lane is a notoriously complicated, complex anime.
yes.
You got that immediately. This you had to take some time to wrap your head around. For me, it was opposite. As soon as he swung the bat in 4, I fell in love with Fooli Cooli. Lane, I had to see probably 4 or 5 times before I could even begin to process it.
Hmm. Yeah.
But,
Well, on that note, I have to get
yeah,
going.
yes, we've run a little long.
Yeah, well, we had to cover
But
the whole
yeah, we
thing,
covered the whole series
I
stuff.
mean, it was
And
it
once
was
again,
definitely something we were trying to do last week, and that didn't work out for us very well.
once again, thank you for indulging me on this.
Oh, of course. No, I
For, I don't know if
thank
we
you
mentioned at the top of
for
this.
showing me an anime that I otherwise probably wouldn't really have watched all the way.
I don't know if I mentioned at the top of this. We did this in honor of my birthday because Fooly Cooli is not just my favorite anime, but my favorite piece of media. It's my favorite anything. So thank you again, and also thank you for the shirt. Greatly, greatly appreciated.
You're very welcome. All right, I'll
So
see
this
you
wraps
in
up
a
number
few
14.
days. Huh?
This wraps up number 14. We'll be back on Thursday. What are we doing on Thursday? Back to Bebop?
Let's see, cause we've got I think we should. I
Okay.
think that's what we should do. But I'll
And
message
we
you.
wanted to, because I think we decided we wanted to do the movie because it takes place between
Yeah.
22 and 23,
Yeah,
and
we
that's where we
definitely have
left
to
off.
do the movie.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So movie for Cowboy Bebop, the movie for Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay.
All
Have a
right.
good night.
You too.
Thank
Bye.
you for this. Bye.